Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's Judge Dredd painting guide. We are painting a Cursed Earth Judge. For those who don't know, the Cursed Earth is a loosely defined area outside the city walls of the mega cities. The iconic outfit is the dust cloak, which you're going to see on the model we're painting today. We are kicking off the painting with the pallid witch flesh, which we are going to just give this model a nice hard dry brushing with. As you can see, I had initially spray painted it black and given it a very light dust and grey so that I could see the model, but now that I've got a few judges under my belt, I know I needed a much brighter base coat to work off. So I just grabbed my basin brush and I'm heavily just covering this in the pallid witch flesh. This is going to make life so much easier. So as you can see, it's wearing its iconic Rad cloak. This could be a judge on the city walls looking out into the wasteland. This could be a warden at one of the work/prison camps. This could even be a judge who's on patrol around the townships of Mega City 1 that exist in the Cursed Earth. Chances are it could also be a judge that's on a long walk, freshly retired from the streets of Mega City 1. Maybe he grabbed his law rod and has freshly walked out into the Cursed Earth and still has his Rad cloak. The Rad cloak is a very iconic piece of equipment for the judges when they're in the Cursed Earth. It helps them during the rad storms. It's meant to lower their exposure to radiation. But yeah, the Cursed Earth is not a place you want to be for very long at all. The place is filled with monsters, dinosaurs, mutants, criminals, robots, ex-presidents that have been in stasis, weird whirlpools and lakes that can send you traveling through time. It is a scary place that makes no sense whatsoever, and it's a place that we should explore more, I think, with the game. Hopefully we do. Hopefully Warlord games do an expansion where we can go into the Cursed Earth. That could be quite fun. Have some real random terrain that does shit to your characters during the game. Then I grabbed the rack of flesh. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm using a lot of GW paints today. I only use one army painter colour. Don't know why, I just fancied using some GW paints. So I'm going to use this colour all over the Rad cloak. In a lot of the artwork I've seen, it's actually grey. I think they've made them like the Judge Warders. So they have these dark grey cloaks. They're either like the city wall watchers or they're the prison guards. That's fine. It's just not what I fancied painting today. So I'm going for something that would look more in place in the desert as opposed to an urban landscape. This is going to take a while. This is the main part of the model. So I'm going to just stop talking, get on with the painting. You guys can join me in a minute. But I'm ultimately just going to base coat the whole model. And we're back, just giving you a little update. As you can see, it is, I'm not kidding, it's most of the model is this Rad cloak. So I just got the shoulder to touch up and then we'll let it dry for a minute. With the model now drying, we only have like little patches of colour to do now, which is quite comical. So we'll start things off with the Nazdrag yellow, which by now, if you've seen enough of my videos, I use this for the gold on the judges. So I'm going to pick out his chest badge and his little helmet seal. Like I said, very quick steps moving forward. We're just doing little patches of colour. I don't know how I feel about this model. I understand why they made it. I feel like a squad of these would look cool if you could get them in different poses to represent a squad of judges in the Radlands, but there's not a lot to this model. You got the helmet, you got the gun, you got his legs and his Rad cloak. That is it. So I'm just trying to be as neat as possible. I don't want to have to go back on any of this to fix it. And there you go. That is the yellow now done. Quick and dirty. Just how we like it on this channel. Then we move on to the Leviathan blue. I think I may have just said that wrong. Livadon blue. It's one of those weird GW dinosaurs. I always say Leviathan, but I don't think that is the name. This is just going to represent his dark blue fatigues that you can just see. This was not an easy step. I should have done this before painting the Rad cloak. My bad. We'll have to go back and touch up the areas that I overflow on. But it's two little spots on the model that I probably could have ignored and the final wash would have covered up and no one would be any wiser, but I know it's there. We then pick up the Tesselar blue. As you can see, I'm using mostly contrast paints at this point. And I'm gonna try and carefully put this into the visor section. I don't want any overflow here. These judges' helmets, they're so iconic. You gotta at least give them a little respect when painting them. It's probably a good time to say like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let me know if there's a kit you want me to open, review, paint. I'm slowly working my way through all the judges. But I've got the Slain kits to get through. Hopefully the ABC Warriors are coming soon. There's actually a few Judge Dredd kits that I'd love to go back to and redo. But whilst I want to redo it all, I have the models already, so it's not a huge priority at this time. But you know how it is. My equipment has improved. I feel like my sound has definitely improved on the channel. So it'd be nice to redo some of those earlier videos. Give them the justice they deserve. As you can see, we've moved on to the iconic red lining. I'm using the Flesh Tearer contrast paint. Some of you in the past have mentioned why don't I just use the base paints, because this isn't what the contrast paints are for. But for me, these contrast paints feel like watered down normal paints. So I find they just paint on a lot smoother for me. I actually have a lot of control. As you can see, I'm using the GW layer brush. And I'm getting pretty smooth straight lines on it. So I'm really not fussed about messing around with the normal paints and having to water them down to the right consistency when I feel that the contrast paints are already there for me. And there we go, red is done. We are racking through these colours quite quick. During that little break I cleaned up the Rad Cloak, as you can now see. Just making sure I've covered up all the blue overspill that I did. Making sure it's nice and clean. I want the Rad Cloak to look correct, if that makes sense. I don't want any weird runs of colours for it. We then move on to the Orc Flesh, which we're going to use for all the iconic green areas. So we've got the gloves, the boots, the knee pads. This is a great green. It flows really easily. I'm not sure if I shook the pot well enough, to be honest with you. You'll notice that when I reach the boots, it flows maybe a little bit too well. And I actually have to go over it a bit later. I'm not sure if that was down to the paint, the way I shook the paint, or if it was just being a bit hydrophobic on the boot for some reason. It happens now and again. Might be a bit of grease. I may have touched it with a greasy finger. I like to think my hand isn't greasy, but you never know. Just gonna take my time, make sure I'm nice and neat. Don't need this green bleeding onto anything. There's no real point. And you can probably come back in a minute. You don't need to watch me do all this. First boot is now complete. Working on the second boot. Now that I'm watching this bit replay, I think the area that it was struggling on, it still had quite a heavy hit of primer to it. Didn't have the pallid witch flesh on it, so I think that was why it was messing around with me. But that's fine. And look at it. He's pretty much looking good. You could probably just slap a wash over everything, like a black wash, and you're almost done. But we've just got a few steps left to do. One being the helmet, and then the weaponry of the judge, and then finish up the Rad Cloak. So we'll let this dry for a minute, and then move on to the next step. Right, the model is nice and dry. We are ready for the next step, which is going to be his face. I'm using the Reichland wash. This was a newer paint to my collection. I actually got it with the Imperium magazine that I'm still getting. And I have to say, I really like it. It gives a very good skin tone. I've been using Guilliman Flesh and Crusader Skin from Army Painter, and it gives a much darker tone. I like this kind of lighter skin on some of the models. I think I've mentioned it in previous videos. I'm trying to play around with all the different skin tones, so having a fourth option now in the pack is quite nice. So I grabbed the Abaddon Black. We are just gonna fill in the helmet. I start by trying to go around the red. If I can just get the edges done, filling in the rest of the helmet becomes a lot easier. Also find that I still have a point on my brush when I first start doing a colour, so it just makes doing these edges a lot easier for me. And with the helmet complete, I'm just going to do his buckles on his Rad Cloak, just to help break it up a little. But as you can see, I got a slight shake on my hands. I had a cup of coffee. Probably not the best when you're about to start painting. But we're just going to finish up this helmet. Try and not make a mess. It's very hard. And then we'll do the belt buckles and we'll move on to the next stage. And that next stage is the Army Painter Grave Lord Grey. Now, normally I use Runic Grey, but with the Rad Cloak being quite bright as it is, I think a darker grey on the weaponry would just help it pop a bit more. So I'm using the Gravelord Grey, and I'm just going to slap it on. We're doing the gun and his Lawgiver in his boot pocket. Don't know what you would call that, his bootstrap. Now, I wasn't entirely sure what weapon this was. So you can upgrade your judge to have a Law Rod, which when I'm reading the description sounds very much like almost a sniper weapon. And then there's the Widowmaker, which sounds a lot more aggressive. The other judges pack, they clearly show you the judges and the weapons they carry, and they're like, this judge has a Law Rod, this one has the Widowmaker. I would have to say this is probably closer to the Widowmaker, but it doesn't look like the Widowmaker. I don't know what this is. I'm going to play it as the Widowmaker, but I think we should have had different rules for it. It looks like a combat shotgun, to be honest with you, which makes me think it should be the Widowmaker. So that's what we're going to go with. Let me know in the comments if you have decided what it is and I'm just being an idiot. Always like to hear back from you, so let me know. It's now time for the bit that I always find fun. Agrax Earthshade. I love putting this stuff on. You just slap it on. It's gonna get real messy, and for some reason my camera has completely unfocused. It's more interested in my hand. There we go. So at the moment, he's tabletop ready. There's no denying that, but I feel this little last step really helps bring it all together. And I'm just going to go over the Rad Cloak. I'll try and be gentle around the gloves and weaponry and badges because I don't want to mess that up. But end of the day, this isn't going to look too bad if they get covered in this wash as well. It'll just make them look a little dirty. But I'm going to work my way around the model. As you can see, I really slap it on. I am not being gentle. I am flooding the area. I'm fine with that. It's not going to look patchy when it dries. If it does, I can fix it. But this is so much fun. It's the easiest part of the model. Most of the paint is now dried, so I don't have to worry about any bleeds or runs. I get to just slap it on and enjoy these final moments of the model. At this point, I'd like to say cheers for watching. Cheers for all the views I'm getting at the moment. It means a lot. I'm very excited. I'm getting close to unlocking some new features on YouTube. So hopefully if we can keep this momentum up, we'll have some new fun stuff coming out. And yeah, make sure you drop a like, drop a subscribe. If you want to comment, drop me a comment. Say hi. Otherwise, come find me on social media and say hi over there. I think a few of you have found your way over, which is great. And yeah, let's get going with this. Cheers for watching.